Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. I am your host, Josh Scar, and joining me this week for a very fun episode is Matt. Matt, welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be here. How's it going?
It's going quite well. No one's been sick in the household, and we're here doing another episode, so that's always a good time. How you been?
I'm doing all right. Also, no sickness, but I also don't have three little kids running around. So,
Yeah, school started in the last couple of weeks, so it's been every day we're like, do you have sniffles? Do you have a cough? What's happening?
yeah,
And just it's nerve wracking every day.
I'm enjoying that certainty while I still have it.
All right. Well, we have a very fun episode ahead of you. We're going to talk with Adam Rose again. His mini series with Source Point Press Corollary wrapped up, and the trade paperback is coming out. So we're going to talk with him kind of about the process of the comic coming out and just thoughts about the comic in general. We're going to try and stay as spoiler free as possible, but this is a spoiler warning ahead of time that there might be some minor spoilers discussed. But overall, we're going to try and stay spoiler free. But first and foremost, we are going to take a quick ad break and hear from our friends Dan and Lou at Cast. We're going to take a quick ad break and hear from our friends Dan and Lou at Casting Views. We will be right back.
I'm Dan.
I'm Lou, and together we are Casting Views.
An uncle and nephew chatting on random topics, some heavy, some fun, but we aim to amuse.
Don't miss out, don't delay. Subscribe to Casting Views today.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Good Pods.
And we are back. We're going to hop right into this. We are being joined by writer Adam Rose, writer of Corollary. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be back with you guys. I feel like it's been such a journey to, I just remember it was like early spring that I first saw you all, and that was a blast. And it really means a lot that you asked me to come back. That was really it felt that you made my day when you threw that out at me. So
Great.
Cool to be.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you back, Adam. I enjoyed this comic immensely. And I was really excited that you were like, yeah, let's talk more about it. Because, again, it was really fun.
Thank you.
And thank you for the review copies as well. So Matt could read them since he wasn't ordering the physical copies like a hoser.
I don't have room in my house for a bunch of
I get it. No, yeah, it's been a lot of fun just seeing it all four issues come out. It wrapped up end of July, so not that long ago. And the process was even pretty interesting. It started before that, but of just getting the trade put together, and there's like some cool bonus materials. So the trade officially comes out. You could tell your comic book stores today or any day you want it as far as a pre-order, but it comes out September 28th or 29th. And the beauty of the trade too is, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of the whole comic book publishing side of life, but initially it'll just be like through Diamond and distributed through comic book stores. But shortly after in October, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble because Source Point, it's pretty cool. They're partnered with Simon and Schuster for their trade collections.
Oh, cool.
So that, hopefully it gets it into more bookstores and all that. So, and then, it was fun putting the trade together because there's some cool bonus stuff in there. This local artist, his name's Shaheen, he did a cool, kind of his depiction of the two main characters and like a pinup in the back, as well as I was really psyched and honored that a friend of mine, pro writer Adam Beechin, he's done like countless DC properties, but he's really big in the animation world. Like he's written like Transformers, that Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon series. He did a bunch of episodes. Like his list of cartoon. Anyways, he was really cool, and he wrote this awesome intro for it. so there's a lot of fun extra little things in there, and like SourcePoint just sent me the proofs of that, if that's the right word, and it's looking good. So I hope we get some new readers. I hope we get some old readers that want to see it all put together, and just keep talking about it and what else is coming up.
Yeah.
So before we really start diving into it, is your dream, obviously we last time we talked about this, you had talked about that you would enjoy seeing this spin-off into an ongoing series. Are there other multimedia outlets that you would entertain the idea of bringing the world of Corollary into? Like, could you see it being adapted into a movie or TV show or anything like that?
Great question, and I want to preface your question because I feel like I've seen this. I'm a hardcore like comic book person since I could hold a comic book, and nowadays with social media, I read a lot of like what pros are talking about, and pro podcasters like yourselves are debating.
Oh,
And
thanks for calling us pros.
well, and I just want to say, like, I see one thing that comes up a lot, like, and there are people on both sides of this. They say, like, if you're writing a comic with the thought that it's going to then become the next, you're going to be able to then like turn that into a animated series or movie or whatever, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. I have to admit, I hate like taking sides in certain things because you always alienate people, but when it in the comic book world, I guess. But I kind of agree with that. Like I wrote this first and foremost as a comic, and I feel like that is a form of writing that is its own thing, and you can't like you hear people say, "Oh, well, I have this screenplay, but it would be a great comic." It could be, but you can't just copy and paste that screenplay into a comic. It doesn't
Right.
work. Um, so I guess my long-winded answer to you is yes. I think, and I thought a lot about it, but because I was like, which would be more suitable? I feel like a mini series, like an episodic, like 6 to 7 episode mini series for at least what this collected, trade crate paperback would be about. That would be like, yeah, a mini series. Could it be a feature length? Yeah, it could, but I think it would be the way I just have the comic laid out is how I kind of would want to see like an animated version of it in episodic form.
Yeah, you can kind of see that the way it's set up, where like they're going to the different places and like having different adventures, meeting different characters. You can see how that break down pretty easily into that kind of.
Yeah, that's and for me, I mean, I could only see it animated. I mean, not this is not a CGI live action kind of hybrid thing in my mind's eye. I mean, I guess nowadays with how amazing special effect technology is, you could, but especially because of Rob's art, and I always, maybe it's just I'm biased, but I give him that. I equate his style to like what Bruce Timm was all about, like so in like Batman animated event, So I that's how I see it, and that's my mind's eye for it. If it were ever to go in that direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because like that's something that when I finally sat down and read the whole thing last week, like that was something that I had noticed it a bit when we talked about the first issue, but I kept coming back to like this looks like the kind of style you would see, maybe not exclusively Bruce Timm, but that was something that was in my mind where it's like when he does line work as opposed to just animation,
Yeah.
it has a very similar style. So I was like trying to think of a way to mention that. I didn't really have a question because it's just an observation, but I'm glad you brought it up because I got the same thing out of that.
No, and it's funny. Like you can kind of see too Rob's development. Like the characters hopefully have an arc, but it's like the arc almost matches him becoming more and more comfortable with them in the 4 issues. So I think if we even did ever get the chance to continue their story, which I do have stories ready to go for, but it's just at the moment that's a frozen idea. But yeah, it would be cool to see how they continue to develop visually as well as just the arc that I kind of envisioned for them.
Yeah, one of my other questions was about that. I know you mentioned last time when we talked about the first issue that you had ideas for possible continuations, and I guess I was curious because it kind of feels like, without getting too much into spoilers, the series ends itself with sort of an extended cast, but you can also see a world where you just jump back into it and it's about a different set of characters. But it
Yeah,
sounds like you have an idea with these characters more ideas with these characters to continue their story.
Well, no, both actually. It's funny you mentioned like the whole like idea of like just following other, because yeah, I mean I've thought a lot about just the sandbox that this represents, as far as you could follow a pair of twins where somebody's like holding. Well, you see it briefly in this, like you see like our warden Toad. He keeps his twin in a padded room in a straitjacket. So like
Right.
people are all going to have their different ways of trying to ensure that they remain alive when they're so tied to this other person. But also like like what I hope this series also follows is just who are you on your own? What does it mean to be just yourself, and what is your identity separate from that other person? So no, I mean yes, the final page and panel of Corollary is, I want it, like it's kind of expanding the family, and I'd love to have the chance to like follow them, but I also would like kind of like to open it up to a B story, where we do see these other brand new characters and the situations and or how they interact with this, the rule of this universe.
Yeah, which we haven't actually discussed really. The premise of Corollary is it's this universe where everyone is born as a twin, and if one twin dies, so does the other. There's a life force connecting them, which obviously we don't dig too deeply into within this series, but that is an interesting concept that I'm sure people would love to know more about as well. With as intricate as the nerd culture has become, you got to know every detail of everything.
Am I
Right.
remembering correctly that it's not just people though? That it's
Yes.
everything is
Correct.
Yes.
Planets.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Exactly.
important thing is the twins, but like and we definitely talked about this last time, but like the way all the bottles have two necks and
Yes.
two spouts or whatever was something I remember you mentioned last time. So like it's definitely just a world of twos for
Yeah.
whatever reason that happens.
I mean, there are some small exceptions, but that's how I kind of wanted it to be. Like predominantly, it is a world of twos, or and be like any living being has a pair. Now that's the thing though. Like you don't have to see that pair, their other self or their twin at all times, and that I hope I established that with like who comes like rushing to the rescue in issue 4 is beings that were from light years away, but they had a sense that it was that something they were needed again.
Yeah, that's interesting how you see, you mentioned how, and it gets back to the various ways that people relate to their twins, right? Where like some people they're hanging out together. Toad has his guy locked up, and then other characters, it's just them, and it's like you mentioned in dialogue, oh, my twin is wherever, and then maybe we see
Right.
them later in the story, maybe we don't. So like there's all different ways that these people would naturally, it's the state of the world, but that doesn't mean everyone is like joined at the hip, which is an interesting way
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
deal with it.
Which I thought that was a great immersion tool where you did have twins that weren't connected at the hip, because in my mind I'm sitting there thinking, you're an adventurer, like why would you let your twin just go anywhere else besides with you? Like you would need them together, otherwise you're living an existential crisis every day of your life. But in a world like that, everyone's used to the idea, so it's not that big of a deal, which I love that.
Is that different than the real world, really? About it. There's no twin out there, but there is we're all living in an existential crisis, aren't we?
True. No, and you bring up something that I would love to get to play with in the future, which I kind of alluded to here and there. But just somebody, it could even be like some super minor character just drops dead walking down the street because their twin just died somewhere else.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, it's dark, but yeah.
Because yeah, I mean that's the other thing. Like in this world, you kind of have gotten used to the idea of people just dropping over dead. Like, oh, did they just have a heart attack or did their twin die?
Right. Yeah.
Flip a coin.
Either way, yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Well, I think that's kind of an allegory for what's happening right now. Like you were just talking about, like if your kid has the sniffles or whatever. Now we're like immediately like, is it COVID? Like, should I be COVID tested? I mean,
Yep.
nothing is one thing. Well, I guess that's the truth for everything. But there's multiple interpretations.
Yeah, but again, the immersion that creates, where everyone's just kind of like, oh, your uncle's off light years away, and we're not worried about it because that's just life in this universe.
That's just life in the yeah. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, but some people do. Some people jail their partner, or some people maybe they live together and they get upset if the other person has something unhealthy to eat or they're not exercising enough. That
Hmm.
all that kind of plays a role as well. Or they're an alcoholic or something like that can be, which slow is like very lightly alluded to as far as our twins that that are the focus of
Right.
this.
Yeah.
One takes better care of themselves than the other, or it can be that one is reckless, or one is a soldier of fortune. So it's all possibilities.
That's really interesting because, I think, I read all 4 issues, but I think this is the first time I'm really connecting those ideas where, like, to give away some of the premise is that it's this world of twins, and there's one woman who everyone thinks in the whole world is the only one to survive her twin dying. And it turns
Right.
out, actually, it's both of the twins' brains sharing the body. And that's a runner throughout the story where one of them is maybe a little more reckless with adventuring, with the way they conduct themselves, what they put into the body. Um, but it's both of their bodies. But for whatever reason, I didn't connect that to the internal struggle in that way, to the external struggle where the same could be said if they were both in their own separate bodies. It's the same thing, but it's just one body instead. That's really interesting. I'm
Yeah.
having that realization on air live right now.
Yeah. No. And I guess this is spoilery, but also just when the other frightening realization is they have X amount of times left where they can take turns
Yeah.
in their one remaining body, and they're going to have to make a choice between who gets that and who's going to be their the brain of the ship. And yes, they can also jump into the various android bodies if they have them around, but it's going to be a permanent deal. And I don't know if it totally click or hits, but I kind of allude to the fact that one of them is claustrophobic. Like one of them has a problem with their time not in a body. And that's incredibly anxiety inducing.
Yeah, that definitely came across. I think that happens the very first time we really discuss it, because obviously at the end of issue one, we discover how
Yeah.
Andromeda slash Cass are both still alive, and the very first interaction we really see of them is, I believe Cass is the one that's controlling the ship at the time,
Yep.
and she's talking about how she needs to stretch her legs, she needs to
Yeah.
feel her fingers and stuff like that, and when Andromeda becomes some of the battle bots or the androids, she's like, oh, these need grease, and like again, filling me with a little bit of existential crisis as I'm reading this. I'm like, what would it be like to not be able to really feel? Like she can sense that
Right.
there's like rust in the fingers, but there's so many like interesting psychological things that you could get into, but this also doesn't necessarily feel like maybe that kind of series. Like it feels a little more like you said, Batman the Animated Series, where yes, it can take a mature turn, but it's never too far away from being exciting and fun as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, the audience, I hope, is a pretty wide net as far as that. You're right. It's not going towards that super cerebral side of things, but the ideas are there.
Yeah.
Which again I think helps with the immersion of the idea as well, because again, other series might not even think about like, oh, she's a robot, she's not going to feel, kind of like Mr. Robot in Doom Patrol,
Yes.
where he has to go through that whole process of kind of relearning how to feel his body without
Right.
feeling his body.
No, and I'd say I was probably subconsciously inspired by him. I mean, prior to like even the show, just I've always been a Doom Patrol fan, and I've always been fascinated by him. I mean, a brain in a robot's body, like what is that like? Now
Yeah.
here, yeah, but for my series, like it's their brain isn't literally put in a robot's body. They're kind of what's the word? What is the word I'm looking for? Like not radio wave, but they're kind of beamed in. Like their sentience can just be projected.
Yeah, it mentions a couple times in the story that they're always technically in the ship, and it's
Yeah,
just like, you're like connecting to
like
like
yeah,
as you connect to
Bluetooth.
your phone,
Yeah,
yeah, Bluetooth or whatever. Yeah. So that's an interesting wrinkle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because Robot Man, he's in there too, but he can't feel anything. That's like even more. I don't know. and there's no opportunity for him to ever feel anything.
Yeah.
He's a wonderfully tragic character.
Kind of like Brendan Fraser. So
Yeah.
God bless
Yes,
that man.
great. And we have his upcoming movie that where he's going to be the whale.
Yes. Which for from everything we've heard, which I mean, those festival movies, everything comes out like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever, but then it hits and it's like, how was this the greatest thing ever?
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Get
from
it,
what I've
man.
heard, it's
You just
it's
get it.
Brendan Fraser. I hope for the best, and he deserves anything and everything that comes his way as far as good fortune.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're kind of talking influences and inspirations. Can you talk a little bit about a few more inspirations that you had for this now that we've gotten to know a few more of the characters?
Oh yeah. I think I've always been, well, it's funny, like these shorter stories in 2000 AD, Future Shocks, like their little 5-page, so the non-Judge Dredd stories. Those, I don't know, some of them just kind of played a role in inspiration for me, combined with like me being like a huge fan of the Twilight Zone and just the premises in there. And then a huge dash as far as like the bombastic side of this, like and again, yes, this my audience is hopefully skews younger and older, but I'm a huge fan of Inkle, the Jodorowsky, like, and the Meta Barons. I mean, those are just, I mean, those are like super adult level, like just mind blowing bonkers, both art and just European philosophical levels of concepts there. But I think they definitely, I would call, are inspiring and influential for like just the kind of science fiction I gravitate towards.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Twilight Zone, and you can kind of see that. Like, I think there's a world where this is just a really solid, like, one issue story that's got the twist at the end,
Yep.
where like that's when you find out, oh,
Yeah.
actually, it's
Yeah.
two brains in a jar and sharing one body.
Yes.
But it keeps going, which is good. But it's also like, oh, there's like you can see the world where it's like this big mystery, and then it turns out it's something when you think about it is kind of like macabre and a little grotesque. Not that your story is grotesque, but you know what I mean.
No, and that's funny you mentioned it because I think the fact that I chose, I mean, I think you're right though. There is, the word grotesque. It also does have like a literary kind of definition to
Right.
it, and I think you're hitting onto something there because, I could have made this a lot like cleaner, a lot less like, get your hands dirty with an actual brain, like physical transfer. There's a lot of ways this could have been done where you never would have seen a brain, but I wanted that messiness to this. I wanted, just like I kind of bringing it back to inspiration as I answer this, but I was also like, I'm a big Conan fan and like Thundar the Barbarian. So the idea of kind of blending fantasy with science fiction is something that this like lightly did. I mean, I know it's like 90% science fiction, but I hope there's like a tinge of fantasy kind of put in there, and I feel like fantasy in sometimes is a little messier, a little more like a little more organic in some cases than certain sci-fi. I'm sure you could. I mean, there's a million holes you could poke in me saying that, but I'm going to stay with it. So yeah, I think grotesque actually does that word is accurate for some of what's going on with this.
So could you talk a little bit about your writing process with this, especially when you're writing between like action scenes and expository scenes? Because with a universe like this, there is a lot of exposition that is needed for people to kind of comprehend what's going on, but it never feels like we're being talked down to in this, which is always a treat.
No, thank you for saying that. No, I mean the big thing I'm continuing to grow and learn about as a writer is, especially in comics, is it's the oldest, simplest creative writing phrase: show don't tell, and that's so important in comics. And I really continuously went through my scripts and pared down dialogue in particular, or any captions, but making sure that like basic important information, the world building information was always there, because there's so many rules to this world that if they get broken, it'll take the reader out of them. And that was something that was so clear to me just even from the first issue. but then, as far as the process goes, and I was lucky, I guess, in this way because it was so collaborative with Rob. Like, yeah, I wrote the whole story and I wrote the whole script for like issues 1 through 4. But when Rob got his hands on issue 1, and he'd send me 5 thumbnails of like the first 5 pages, I would like see. I was like, oh, this didn't work, or oh, I need like to add like a whole page or at least 5 panels of action to spell out what is missing here. So I would go back and I would rewrite and then give it back to Rob. And so there was a lot of that helped me grow even more as we did this, and hopefully not shortcut the series. In fact, I think it gave it the series the room it needed to breathe, because obviously in plenty of circumstances you write the script, you send it in, and that's it. This was a fortunate situation where Rob and I had the chance to kind of work collaboratively as far as where areas where things needed to be spread out.
One thing that you had mentioned was taking readers out of the moment, which I never was actually taken out of the moment, but I did have a storytelling moment where at the beginning of issue 3, when Cass shows up on what is it, Modesgar,
Yep.
on his love resort,
Yep.
she introduces herself as Captain Cassiopeia, which I was like, is that intentional? Because wouldn't the universe know that Andromeda was the one that was still alive? So was that an intentional slip?
That was an intent, yeah, because I wanted her to be. She's not as what's the word? Not as thoughtful, not as organized as Andromeda. I wanted her to be loose. So yeah, she slipped, and that was that was her f up, her mess up, and and there's a few other like little moments that if I get the chance to continue the series, will kind of also show like I just wanted some character flaws there.
Okay, because I don't recall there being any kind of immediate consequence for that, but it stood out to me that she introduced herself as Cassiopeia, and I was like,
Yeah, no, you're right. And I guess, yeah, sure. In retrospect, could I have had Andromeda like call her out on that at the moment? That probably would have helped that moment. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, again, I don't mean to sound like I'm critiquing it. Just
No.
it's something I'm like, I get to
it.
talk to this guy and ask him, so I'm going to ask him.
Yes. No. I think you're right.
Hold on, let me pull up my list real quick.
Matt's the note taker of anyone.
So in issue 1, panel 3, you have this art mess up.
Oh no! Please hit me with what you got.
I know we mentioned this last time, and forgive me if this is repetitive. I have the memory of a goldfish. I don't remember. I remember it being mentioned. I don't remember what was said. But you were talking about Rob and his art earlier, and one of the things I noticed is the sort of watercolor painterly feel to it.
Yes.
And like I said, I know we talked about this. How did that come about? Is that something that they brought to the table, or was it your idea, or was it more of a collaboration?
Great question. So yeah, no, Rob watercolored by hand his own page.
It's actual watercolor, not just a look.
For the first three issues. Then he got fried, and he had a very just honest moment. And at first I was freaked out because he's like, I can't do it for the 4th issue. I don't have it in me. But I have this person, Gabby Metzler, who can digitally mimic my watercolors, and no one, hopefully no one will see the big difference. And I think she did a great job with the 4th issue.
Yep.
But yeah, Rob, initially he did a watercolor for the cover, and it's actually good. It's a cover you haven't seen. It was the Ashcan cover for Source Point, like to get like retailers interested. And it'll be in the trade paperback. But he watercolored that, and then at first I was like, oh, let's watercolor certain moments to just convey like kind of an emotional, like whatever, some kind of an emotional switch. And then but then he tried it for the first few pages, and I looked at that and I was like, no, there's something unique here. There's something I haven't seen done before, and I took it to I showed Source Point, and they were like, yeah, this is it. This is what's going to make it stand up on the shelves in comparison to other books. And I think it worked. It was a big risk. I was nervous. I was like, because in my mind's eye prior to that, was I even thinking that a whole, series would look like that? No, but I feel like it hit the tone that we wanted for this. It
Yeah,
gave it kind of
definitely.
this dreamy, ethereal feeling, even though it was all science fiction.
Yeah, and that was actually something that I wanted to bring up when we first started talking about maybe translating it to other mediums, because that watercolor look is so unique. I could definitely see it being kind of like a unique art style unto itself, kind of like what Into the Spider Verse created for that movie, and trying to not recreate that exact thing, but bringing that watercolor style to an animated series or film would just make it pop that much more with an already engaging story.
Yeah, like, or have you all seen that series on Netflix, Arcane? It is gorgeous, and actually, I got to go to like 'cause a friend of mine is an animation director person. He took me to like a screening, and they had a Q&A. I didn't know this, but like the animation studio behind it, they're out of Paris, and normally before this, they did all video game related things, and like it's so unique. Like the style of Arcane is almost like not watercolor painting, but like oil painting. It's the most and apparently, and this might be inaccurate now, but at the time, it's the most money Netflix has sunk into an original animated series, as
Oh,
far
wow.
as letting them just run wild, and it's paid off. Like it's also going to be there. It's the first Emmy-winning animated series for them.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it.
And you don't need to know anything about Dota, the video game it's from, or no, sorry, League
Mhm.
of Legends, not Dota. I get them mixed up. It's people that see this. Oh well, I'm not a League of Legends person. Or like my son, like he has. I got him to watch it. He loved it. And he always tries to tell his friends to watch it, and they're like, "Oh, I don't like League of Legends. I'm not going to watch that." They're missing out. I mean, and these are like kids that are really into anime and manga, and they're missing one of the most. It's also this one of the smartest shows I've seen in a long time.
I,
So yeah, I guess I just brought that up because that they similar to like Into the Spider Verse, it's got its own thing going on, and it really makes it pop as far as the series goes.
yeah, I know Melissa Flores, writer for The Dead Lucky, said that Arcane was a bit of an inspiration for her for that series as well.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I hope it keeps going.
Yeah, I'm concerned about Netflix's animated series because they
Me
said
too.
animation is one of the first things that were going with their budget cuts.
Yeah, I know. I'm worried too.
So one thing that did really stand out to me, especially in the last issue where we got a little bit more characters coming in, um, can you talk a little bit about the representation that you decided to bring into this world? It definitely feels more like a Star Trek kind of universe where people are just accepted for who they are, and you have a couple of people who show up who go by certain pronouns. There's the they them that shows up, and I don't believe it's a spoiler, but it seems that Andromeda is at least bi, if not gay.
Yes. No, I wanted to have that be a part of the world, totally accepted, but not in your face. I mean, nowadays, I mean, I understand that people there's an impulse to really want to make sure we representation. I think is so important, and I think in any cosmic universe, there's going to be all kinds of orientations and and infinite numbers of pronouns available. So I wanted that to happen, and I wanted it to be, the word isn't subtle. I just wanted it to exist and not have to be highlighted. Yeah, that was intentional. I wanted to just there. Oh, okay, that character's this, that character's that. Move on, moving on. Like it's just that's part of the world. There's nothing. I mean, could there be storylines around it? Absolutely. But yeah, for this, I wanted it just to be a very casual thing because I want, like, especially like younger readers, I want them to just read something that's like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, no big deal. This is, it is what it is.
And that's the way it's got to be done. Is it just needs to be treated as normal. It doesn't need to be
Right.
highlighted. It just needs to be there and treated as
Yes.
normal.
100%.
All right, so I teased this one a little earlier, and we talked about it a little bit. The sisters have a finite number of switches that they have left before they can't. The bodies, the brains, and everything just cannot handle the switches anymore. And so there is a decision that has to be made where one has to remain as the sentience of the ship, and one gets to continue living life in a human body. What, without spoiling who goes where, what was the deciding factor into determining who remains in the body and who remains as the ship?
Sure, great question. And I guess I want to answer by saying yes, they are twins, but one of them is the big sister. One of them has always been taking care of the other one. And I think that's true in any sibling relationship. And sometimes, forget about even twins. Sometimes it's the younger sibling taking care of the older one, or plural. So I wanted this to be a moment where we see the ultimate sacrifice. And and if I get the chance to continue this, there's going to be repercussions to that. There's going to be regret. There's going to be guilt, and it's not. And then there's going to be like another level of obligation that's kind of layered onto this relationship, and the potential for disaster as far as like having to live like that. Because I would, even though I want this to be action packed kind of series, I also don't, I wouldn't skirt away from recognizing how that might take its toll on someone. So yes, there's a reason for who does what, and it has everything to do with which person feels more responsible for the other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can totally see that in the series, and just based on what is like there that we've already talked about, you can definitely see many venues for how to continue exploring that, and I'm sure some that I'm not the writer. I'm sure some that I haven't even thought of. How do you feel about how the issues have been out for a little while now? How do you feel about how they turned out, how they've been received? Like, what's your vibe on the series now? Sort of in the rear view. Like, where are you at?
Yeah, no, it's like I mean, it's been a wild ride, and it took close to 4 years from the first time I started writing it to it being done. Overall, I'm super thrilled with how it all went and how it was received. Are there things that I would love to do differently? Sure. I mean, actually, one thing I would say is I wish I even like these 4 issues. I wish I stretched into 5. I
Okay.
wish, because I feel like the pacing was almost too fast a clip. I think no. Am I happy with how it does come in 4 issues? Yes. But are there little pockets that I would have liked to kind of stretch a tiny bit? Yes. I learned a lot about just the indie publishing. Well, I mean, I did some work before this that came out years before, which was like definitely educational. But this, with its just the promoting and getting the word out and continuing, I'm still trying. I'm like, now that it's going to be collected, I'm actually trying to like hopefully get like libraries interested in it, and like trying to just stretch what the audience could look like. And I'm very happy, but I've learned a lot with the process. That's for sure. Like I've definitely, and with future things that and that's the other thing. While this was all going on this summer and the spring, I've been continuously working on some new projects because I feel like I guess the way my writing juices flow, I can never like pause. Like I can't do that. I
Yeah.
have to keep going forward, and I almost get anxious if I'm not getting the chance to work on new things.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
Sounds like a
Um,
classic artist. You're never quite pleased with what you have. You gotta keep trying to refine it, but then if you refine it too much, then it becomes an issue as well. So
Sure.
I think 4 issues was really solid with this. I would have loved to have seen 5 because again, I had a lot of fun with this. But Matt, I interrupted. I'm sorry.
I was just just talking like I do, but it's interesting because sometimes the not having the time, or not taking the time rather, maybe, to like flesh out some ideas can work really well. Like I'm a big fan of like Grant Morrison's work, and a lot of their stuff. It's like much headier and more psychedelic than this, but it's like you're reading an issue and then it's like, oh, that thing could have been an entire
Yeah.
entire series on its own, and they just like blew right past it. So
Right. Right.
sometimes it works, and I
No,
I
totally.
think that there's a lot here that it's moving at a fast clip, and that is in general, I think it works really well for this series.
No, it means a lot to have you guys say that, because I did feel like that was kind of something I wanted. I wanted it to be like just like pedal to the metal action. I wanted it to not really ever have too many down moments. Yeah, I guess, but sometimes I also just think, oh gosh, it would have been fun to have like 3 or 4 more splash pages, or even a couple double splash pages, as far as like
Yeah.
just because especially the 4th issue is like these epic battles. That I guess
The
that's where
big
I'm
finale.
talking about. I guess maybe the other ones, that's where I would have, like, I wish I could have made issue 4 the way like Kirkman and Otley in some of their Invincible issues were just literally like battle scenes. So
Yeah, right.
that's how I would have, like, it would have been awesome to have like kind of a issue 4 and 5 mixture of epic double page, like just seeing like all, all the beings from all the first 3 issues are converging, plus the new ones. So that's where I would have liked to stretch things out.
I can just imagine Rob right now sitting in his chair, just if he's actually listening to this, being like, "Thank God he didn't get 5."
Oh yeah, no.
Or maybe he's like, man, he paid me by the page.
Yeah.
I should.
Yeah, Rob's he's been working hard on some new stuff. I can't remember who's publishing, but I've seen him, like, he's been announcing some stuff on Twitter, and it looks great. It's more on the fantasy side of things, I think. But I don't know if it's finished yet.
With talking about the art a little bit, is there a favorite Easter egg of yours in this series?
Well, okay. There's one little moment at the end where you meet the parents, and it's something that it's deeply buried, that would be explored later. So yeah, there's an Easter egg kind of early on when we meet their folks.
I'll have to look for that. I'll have to go back and look for it.
But it's a tease. You don't want to give too much away. Is that what I'm gathering?
What's that?
You don't want to give too much away about what it is. Is that what I'm gathering?
Well, okay, no, I mean, well, I could. It's just I kind of allude to them. It involves kind of what you were talking about before with like pronouns, and it involves like one of the parents that they actually haven't always appeared the way they appear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did not. Yeah, I did not pick up on that. Interesting. All right. Yeah, I'll have to go back and check that too.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
that's just, again, like back to what you all brought up earlier, and what my goal was, is like kind of having certain things like that be subtle and not. I feel like maybe it was a little too subtle, if I were to look back on it, but it's there for something to explore in the future.
Yeah, very cool. You mentioned some of the projects you have coming up. Is there anything like that you want to talk about or can talk about?
Yeah, well,
Or not
sure.
yet?
I mean, Tidal Wave, Blue Water Productions, they do a lot of bio comics, and
Okay.
they hired me. I got to write, and I got to see the proof for it. I got to write a comic about Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters,
Oh, cool.
Nirvana. So that's coming out, I believe, this November. And then their publisher, they were pretty happy with that, so they hired me to. I got to do a one shot for their kind of Greek mythological ongoing series, 10th Muse, where it follows Jason and the Argonauts. He's like trapped in the underworld, and Perseus, as with his Pegasus, they like go down to the underworld to break him free.
Cool. Very fun.
And that one is pretty cool. They like, because that publisher likes to do a lot of homage covers to like famous DC Marvel series, DC in particular. So they already showed me the cover teaser for that, which I didn't even know existed, but it was like a old Superman fights He-Man comic. So they did an homage to that, and so those are coming out. And then I'm working hard on this project with this artist Magenta King. He did Jenny Zero for Dark Horse, which I highly recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with that.
Yeah, so it's pretty sweet, and so that's in early stages, as well as another project that I guess I can't say too much about, but that's another artist he's gonna have some. So yes, there's things going on, but the tidal wave ones are coming out this fall.
Cool, very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be too early to tell, but do you think there might be more Corollary on the horizon, or too soon to tell? Or
I hope so, but at the moment, too soon to tell. But
gotcha.
yeah, I hope so. And I hope to be at Fan Expo in San Francisco because Source Point is going to be there. It's the weekend after Thanksgiving, so I'm hoping to get to sit at their booth at least for a Saturday there and just get to hang out with them in person because they're based out of Michigan, but I'm hoping to hang with them since they're going to be out here.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then before we were recording, you were talking. We were all kind of talking about how the industry is kind of leaning more towards trade paperbacks. Do you think if there is another chapter for Corollary, it would be more of a trade paperback story, or would it be individual issues that would eventually be collected?
That's a very good question. Geez, I guess my instinct is because I'm so old school. I'd still want to see it in single issues first. But as you said, things are changing so quickly. Maybe I got to get over that. And it would be a volume 2. So I guess I didn't give you a straight answer there.
That's a good enough answer, I think.
Well, and that's an interesting question because something else you see a lot lately, like you've seen some high profile like writers at like DC, for example. There was a bunch who departed to do their own thing on like Substack, basically.
Right.
Maybe I don't know how the publisher handles it, but is it a thing where if maybe more corollary doesn't happen through them, are you free to like take it somewhere and like publish it online or like find a new publisher? We don't have to get into business deals, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think it's a matter it kind of involves like a statute of limitations kind of deal on the contract. So I think after X period of time, and also if like hypothetically, let's say I said, hey, I want to do this. I want to do it with you, but I know you're, so I don't have a good answer to that question. I mean, could it be done somewhere else? Yes. Would I like it to be with Source Point? Yeah, they've been really good to me. So that would be.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble
Yeah.
with. I'm just curious.
Sure. And would I be opposed? I know they have a partnership with Global Comics as far as digital. Though again, I'm so old school. I love like hard copies of things. I don't know if I'd want it to just be digital.
Yeah. A few years ago, I made the decision to go all digital, partially because of space reasons,
Sure.
and which ended up being fortuitous a couple of years later when I couldn't go to a comic shop every week because I was worried about a deadly virus. It turns out, but it was like one of the hardest things where it's like, I just like comics, and you get used to it, but it's still like there's something about just holding the thing in your hand, which is
like I have a closet that's stuffed now because the long boxes are kind of a problem. So I get it. I mean, it's something I got to figure out.
Yeah, this entire shelf here is long boxes and short boxes that I have like space for one more short box, and then I don't know where I'm putting the rest of these things.
That's where I'm at. And my wife is not, she has only limited patience for this.
Well, that is like the genuine benefit because it's like, I have all these long boxes, and I'm like, I have an iPad.
Yeah.
There's a drawback. You don't have the paper. You don't have like the ink and it. That feeling, but it is still like, well, if I'm going on a trip, I can take my entire collection.
Well, when that digital purge happens, we'll be laughing at you.
No, I mean, I did the Marvel Unlimited subscription for a few months, and that was fun. But then, I just like yesterday, I just read the latest Punisher where he's fighting Ares, the god of war. I liked having it in my hands. So, I don't know. But I get it. I probably should like kind of split it more and have more digital reading.
That Punisher series is good though.
Oh yeah. Are you all caught up on it?
No, I do read some of that stuff in Marvel Unlimited, and they're about 3 months behind.
Okay, then I can't.
I'm not too precious about spoilers for stuff I don't like specifically go out and buy, but that is one that I'm like, with Punisher, there's a point, culturally a few years ago where I was like, do we need the Punisher anymore? I don't know.
Right.
And I think Marvel felt the same way because there was a couple years before where he didn't have a series, and now this one comes out and it's like, damn, I should have been buying this. This is good.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what they're doing with him right now, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. That's not been on my list. I've been trying to keep up with Nightwing and Corollary, Radiant Black, and Rogue Sun, and all those.
Oh yeah, those are great. Yeah, Nightwing's been great. Yeah, Rogue Sun. Oh yeah, you named some good ones.
Yeah, I can't get enough of the Tom Taylor Nightwing run right now. That is just fantastic.
I've been doing that in trades, so I only have volume 1.
That's another one that I read digitally on one of the apps too, where it's fun because like I do try and buy stuff I really want to get day one, but I'm basically reading everything.
Yeah, well,
because I've got these apps, and it's just if I can wait 6 months, it's
right.
like, hey, all right.
That's a benefit. You're right.
Yeah, Bruno Redondo's covers, I can't not have them. They're just too fantastic for those Nightwing books.
Yeah.
Well, we got off track from your stuff a little bit, but while we're here, like, is there anything that you're like just digging on right now, or like, that you just want an opportunity to talk to somebody about, that like shows you're watching? Like,
we have episodes called "What You Doing," where we just talk about the nerd things we're doing. So, Adam Rose, what you doing?
I'm loving She-Hulk. I don't understand anyone that doesn't like it. I love the comic, and I love the breaking of the fourth wall. She did it before Deadpool ever did it. And I feel like I hate that, I got negatively influenced when like people were complaining about the CGI before it came out and comparing her to looking like Fiona from Shrek. And, I watched the show and yes, special effect wise, are there like a couple of split seconds where like, oof, that, it's almost like there was a lag there, or that, yes, but that's true for every single thing. I mean, it's like, and I think, it's a great show. However, I will say, like, now, if you all caught up on it.
I am, yes.
Yep.
Like that character that everyone's going bananas over, Wong's the girl.
Madison, yeah.
Madison. I feel like, all right, let's slow down on like saying let's have like a whole Madison series and the Madison verse. I mean, it's a fun character, but I'm not ready to crown her the newest Marvel phenom. But no, so I love She-Hulk, and I actually, for me, it might be my favorite Marvel series.
It's pretty good. It's pretty up there. It is funny to talk about the CGI, because it's like, yeah, weird that they didn't spend billions of dollars on the lawyer sitcom show.
Right.
Weird.
No, I think it hits the vibe and tone of what I like about She-Hulk so much. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then, other than that, what have I seen? Well, I did see Morpheus not that long ago, and I don't think it's as bad as everybody says it is. I mean, I think it was like it didn't even barely seem to nod that it was in any Marvel related world. I mean, as far as a story about a scientist who gets the vampire bat powers on its own, it's fine. I think the complaint might be that it just didn't really tie in much.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just more that, is Morbius really a character that deserves his own solo movie?
Sure.
Like, can he be a supporting character? Definitely. Can he be an antagonist or an anti-hero in a movie? Sure. Can he carry his own 90 to 120 minute movie? That's debatable. But Sony only has so many characters that they can do anything with, so they're just doing what they can.
Right.
I can't watch it because he doesn't have those hand suckers from the 90s series. Can't do it.
Too violent for you?
Yeah.
Well, it's so weird that is on Netflix.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, oh, am I going to have to watch this now?
Yep, it's already number 1 on Netflix.
Yep.
We're going to put it in theaters a third time.
And we're going to get a Morbius too, because Sony doesn't understand the joke.
No, they don't. Oh, they don't. It's Morbin time or something. So yeah, no, I guess those are the most recent things. And like I said, I've been trying to do the Ring of Power, but found out my 9-year-old is not ready to watch that with us as a family. She can handle She-Hulk. that's like our family viewing is She-Hulk, but not Rings of Power. It's too.
I haven't seen that yet. Is it
Oh, it's
is it
good.
violent?
It's
Is it
just
boring?
it's too.
To a 9-year-old at
It's
least?
too slow for
Gotcha.
my 9-year-old. Like she can't. Like the story's so complicated, and the
Yeah,
first
right.
episode is so heavy on the world building, which I love. I've read it all, so and I've seen it all. So for me, it's great. But no, we got to find. We'll all watch Pinocchio, like Tom Hanks' Geppetto.
Then you got to traumatize her when all the kids turn into donkeys.
Yes, that's true.
That's a rite of passage as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. So that'll be it's hard to budget in the time for the thing, like before we started airing here we talked. I mean, I have to get into the new Game of Thrones spinoff because but I can't watch that with the kids. It's too
Yeah,
much.
right.
Yep.
It's do they in this one? They seems like they turned up the volume. Like the first episode, without getting explicit, was body parts that I hadn't seen removed were getting removed.
Yeah, it's such a weird dichotomy because like we were talking about before we recorded, Ricky, my wife, and I, we were watching The Boys. Like we finished that a few weeks ago, and there's like so much just blatant violence and grotesqueness in that show. But there's a shot very early on in episode 1 of the new
Yep.
Game of Thrones where someone takes an axe to the face, and for whatever reason, I've seen a guy get completely just exploded from the inside in The Boys, but that axe to the face, I was like, I might need a bag for that one.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think I think they want us to be that shocked. They're just trying to think of new ways to continue that. Especially, it's all I've watched the first episode and a half. It seems like they're also trying a little too hard to make sure they keep that R-rated level of sex scenes going.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need
It's HBO. It's a staple for HBO.
True. But have you all seen that old because it was during the original Game of Thrones, the Andy Samberg like mockumentary, like it was like a behind the scenes of Game of Thrones for SNL?
I
don't
had
think I've
not
seen that
known.
one.
Oh, it's amazing. I got it. They basically
I'll
they
add it to
have,
the
like,
episode description.
they have like the real cast members, like the Jon Snow actor and other people mixed with like SNL people, and then the whole payoff is they're all talking about one of the advisors for the show, like, oh yeah, Billy's been great for Game of Thrones. We really need Billy. It's just sometimes Billy goes a little too far. And then it's like Andy Samberg is Billy, and he's a 10-year-old. And he's like, well, what I think, no, he's a 13-year-old. He's like, this scene works, but we need more people doing it.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's the thing you saw a lot in Game of Thrones, where it's an expository scene that's just them saying, "Oh, this is what's happening in the story," but it has to open with them just going at it
Yes.
because it's like this scene's too boring unless somebody's getting their head chopped off.
For Game of Thrones, I guess because it was new to me, I didn't, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is shocking. But now, I guess with this new series, and maybe that's just the fault of being a follow-up, it's like sometimes I'm like, that's totally not necessary.
Right.
No, I hear you. I'm not one for gratuitous sex scenes. And I believe the Game of Thrones fan base was the one that coined the phrase sex position for that show.
Jeez. Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I believe it. So no, I mean, well, I guess the last thing I'll bring up as far as things I'm really into is I'm not totally caught up, but 2 animated series that I love, Harley Quinn,
Yeah.
and Primal.
Oh, I've heard great things about that, but I've not gotten around to it yet.
If you like Samurai Jack, you have to watch Primal.
It's the same guy, right?
Same guy.
Yeah.
I'll butcher his name, so I'm not even going to pretend to say it right.
That's why I said the same guy.
The same guy. Yeah,
I know, but I'm going to mess it
avoid
up.
that. No, you have. It's on HBO. It's excellent.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, all right. I'll give it a shot.
I'll have to add that to the list as well.
Harley Quinn is really great though. Like, when they were promoting that show 2019, 2020, whatever, I was like, there's no way that's gonna be good. And I'm like, it fucking rules.
Yes.
It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one episode this season where the Joker becomes the mayor, which, sorry, spoiler alert, that I did not care for. That episode I just felt like was treading a lot of water.
Right.
But everything else around that episode, the last two episodes and everything beforehand, was really fun and really good.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And I know they got picked up for another season.
Yeah, which was really good to hear, especially after like everything happening on HBO.
Yes.
It was like, well, all right. It's basically like anything that might be even kind of niche was like, all right, this is going to be over soon.
Yeah. This made the cut, thank goodness. So yeah, those are the last two I'd highly recommend.
Well, I had a Star Trek related question for you, Adam, just to kind of appease Matt, but I don't know if it really fits anymore. But I'll throw it in. I'll throw it in there anyway. So going back to Corollary to kind of put a capper on all of this, without getting into the spoilers of the resolution, there is a War Duke that we meet that is kind of the sparking point to kick off this adventure. And the resolution did feel very Star Trek to me, where it wasn't necessarily like a Disney ending where the villain kind of does themselves in, or a Marvel ending where the hero deals the final blow. It was very Star Trek, where it felt very amicable, and I'm not quite sure what the other word I was thinking of would be, but just it. You have a decisive winner, but both parties leave on decent terms.
Yeah,
without
no.
their. So it felt very Star Trek to me. So I was wondering what the inspiration was for that.
Well, no, actually, I guess you're bringing me to that. Those Star Trek has been a huge part of my life. I mean, Next Generation, I guess maybe was like bigger than anything, but the original series, Deep Space Nine, everything. And actually, I guess the other thing I would say, I've dabbled in Paramount Plus, and I've been watching like Discovery. I watched the first 2 seasons of that, and then I've started. What's the new one? Generations.
Strange New Worlds is the
Strange
newest
New World.
one.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Started that. Great stuff. And so I'm a Trekkie through and through. And I think, yes, that was there for me, because I think even when I was writing that scene, like we were just in the height of like just whereas the beginning maybe of the pandemic, plus just the nightmare of the world of politics we were living in and everything. I don't know. I think something seeped into me where I was like, you know what? I want there to be like a peaceful resolution. I want these characters to say, or one of them to say, I've enough. Like, all right, it's over. It's over. Let's end it here without any more bloodshed. So yeah, I think all that combined, it was something that had a Star Trek intentionally so feel to it.
That makes Matt very happy, I'm sure.
I think about things other than Star Trek.
I have my Riker uniform that my kids won't let me wear for Halloween anymore because I've done it too many years in a row.
I have a former coworker now, but good friend who every year on Halloween would wear like a TNG era like blue uniform, and when I first met him, it was before I was really into Star Trek, and I was like, that's kind of dorky, man. And now I'm like, that's cool as hell.
Oh yeah. Somebody, or maybe it shrunk, but I used to have like just a blue like McCoy t-shirt with just the emblem here. I loved it, but yeah, I got to re-up that, I guess. No, I think Star Trek is just the best stuff ever.
Yeah, I was watching Deep Space Nine in the background at work today. Don't listen, boss. Don't listen.
I guess the only series that I did not see all the way through was Enterprise.
Yeah, I buy that. I will say Enterprise is one of those series that like gets really good after everyone like wrote it off.
Okay.
Really good is maybe pushing it, but like its best stuff is like near the end before they get canceled because nobody's watching it anymore.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're a big Trek person, are you all familiar with The Expanse?
I've seen maybe the first season and a half, and I kind of fell off it, not out of lack of interest, but I just get distracted by either shiny things, or that was another one where I was like, in the beginning, early pandemic, I was like, oh, I've got time. I should finally watch this. And then I ended up being like, wow, I'm depressed. I'm just going to watch TNG over and over again.
Yeah. So well, yeah, The Expanse is bleaker by a mile. Yeah. So yeah, I get that.
So I definitely, it's one that I'm like, I got to get back to it. But I just whenever I have like a whole show in front of me, I'm like, this is why I love watching shows week to week, because I'm like, oh, I've got 4 seasons ahead of me, and then I'll get a half a season in, and then like, oh, something else came out. I'll go watch that. And it's like,
I hear
oh,
you.
shit.
No, I get overwhelmed too. I couldn't agree more. Like I'm one of the last Breaking Bad fans that haven't watched Better Call Saul.
Oh, it's so good.
I know. I keep hearing that. I gotta just do it. I gotta do it.
Speaking of Trek, the only Star Trek thing I'm actually familiar with is Lower Decks. Have you given Lower Decks on Paramount Plus a chance?
It's
Okay.
funny. Yes, I like
It's real good, and it's so baffling to me that's the show that you're like, okay, I'll watch it. The show that's like, it's fine on its own, but it's also like this most recent episode is like, oh, there's like 3 or 4 deep cut jokes that
Oh wow,
make no sense if you haven't seen these episodes 100 times.
Well, of course, Rick and Morty. I did watch the first episode of the newest season, and I loved it. I love Rick and Morty. Love.
Yeah, I haven't seen that episode yet, but I like the show a lot.
Oh, yeah. I burned through them too quickly.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. That was a great chat, Adam. Thank you so much for just sitting down and talking with us and talking Corollary and all this nerd stuff and basically giving us a what you do in part 3.
Yeah,
anytime. No, thank you guys for having me again. It was great.
Definitely. And Matt, thank you as always for taking the time to be on.
Yeah, always happy to be here.
And Adam, would you like to share any of your socials?
Oh, sure. Twitter is at AdamRose74 and Instagram at ShazamCap. And that's it.
Matt, you still have a protected profile, so we're just gonna kind of let you.
You can't find me.
His shields are up.
You can find me at Josh_Scar. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at I had a good streak going. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Talking Smack Pod. You can email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com. You can join our Discord. That's in our link tree description. We have merch. You can buy mugs, Pride mugs, stickers, drinking glasses. Again, for the Pride mug, for every 20 we sell, we will donate $100 to the Trevor Project. The Adam Project is a Netflix show.
Yeah, not to Adam Rose.
I want to drink.
I am all thrown off now.
I'm over here like, we have a Discord?
Yeah, Alex runs that one. I don't really use it that often, but Alex suggested we get one. So let's hear. Please like, subscribe, review, leave us comments, follow us on your favorite podcast player of choice. And that's really it. I apologize for flubbing this outro again.
One of these days you're going to learn that you can edit this stuff out.
Yeah.
One of these days I'm going to learn that I could just actually like take the time and record it and then just paste it in every time.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That'd save me so much time. But I like flubbing it because it just it adds to the runtime and people get annoyed. But Adam, thank you again for being here. As always, it's so much fun to have you on. We will definitely invite you on whenever you are able, and any projects you have, we will work with you and see what we can't get for people to talk about it.
Yeah, come back anytime.
Matt, thank you again. And everyone listening, again, I apologize for this outro and take care.
It's still going. I'm still doing it.
Watch Star Trek, live long and prosper, and mind meld your weekend away.
All right.